This Atari archive asks the question, is it a monkey or is it a man? We've got a couple unexpected firsts out of Hangman, the focus of this Atari archive episode. First, we've got the first VCS conversion of a game that you could have played by getting a pad of paper, a pencil, and another person. Even blackjack required a pack of playing cards, but this is absolutely a game that requires little more than the materials around the house for you and a partner. For those unfamiliar, Hangman is a game that dates back to the Victorian era. One person thinks of a word and marks down how many letters it is, and any other players have to guess the letters in the word on the way to figuring out what it is. For each incorrect letter, you draw part of a gallows and a little man with a noose around his neck, or alternatively, and less gruesomely, a tree with a monkey hanging from the branch, the image the game manual tries to have you conjure up. Get enough wrong answers, and the drawing is completed. The players have lost, and the word-generating person wins. Guess the word correctly, and that player wins. I feel like its popularity as a game wanes after elementary school, at least where I grew up, but it can be a fun way to kill a few minutes if you can find at least one other person to join in. If for whatever reason you're really interested in playing Hangman on a 40-year-old game console, however, the VCS does do a decent job of it. This is thanks to the other first Hangman does. It's the first game program that is 4 kilobytes in size. This is an incredibly tiny amount of space by modern program standards, but every game we've seen so far, and will continue to see for some time, fits into 2 kilobytes of ROM space on the cartridge. According to programmer Alan Miller, the additional space in Hangman was used to store its library of words, and being the first person to use a 4K cart, he had to clear it with Cinertech, the vendor for the ROM chips used in the cartridges, to make sure it could still meet the VCS's timing and electrical current requirements. 4K games would eventually become the standard for the VCS, as the extra space allows for more features and AI routines. But that all started with Hangman. With this vast 4K of space fitting a total of 510 words, Miller programmed in different difficulty levels that would adjust the vocabulary the game would choose from. The higher the difficulty level, the broader the band of words the game would pull from. In Game 1, you'll get vocabulary from American, 1st grade level up through 3rd grade. Game 2 adds words up to 6th grade, Game 3 takes you through 9th grade, and Game 4 includes vocabulary from a high school level. If the player guesses the word correctly, they win a point, and if they don't, the computer gets a point. First 5 points wins. Game types 5 through 8 allow for 2 players to alternate turns guessing the word with the same increasing vocabulary options, with the overall winner being whoever wins 5 times. Game type 9 allows one player to create a word for the other player to guess, essentially turning your VCS into an awkward and expensive pad of paper that also requires the guesser to turn away from the television while the word is entered. In all cases, players have 11 tries to guess the letters before the drawing is complete and the game is over. Setting the difficulty switch to A gives the player 20 seconds to select a letter before the game registers an automatic failure. Set to B, the player has unlimited amount of time to think about their guess. Hangman, or Spelling under the Sears Telegames label, entered the market possibly around May 1978, having been shown at both the January and June CES shows that year, and being presented in the April 1978 product catalog as coming soon. It held on for a surprisingly long time despite being such a simple game. It was advertised as a brain game as late as 1982 in one of Atari's product catalogs. After Atari Corporation was formed in 1984 from the ashes of Warner-era Atari's home division, Hangman disappeared from its sales numbers, save for 1988, when inexplicably the company sold 1,802 copies of the game. These copies likely account for the gray-labeled Hangman carts that occasionally pop up with Atari Corp text on them. In the few product reviews of the VCS at the time, Hangman seems to be largely overlooked, but has a modern reputation of being one of the less popular games from the early VCS. This isn't terribly surprising given that it's, well, Hangman, but that hasn't stopped some enterprising fans of developing an editor program to allow people to make their own word lists and change the graphics. At the least, Atari's game seems better remembered than the 2 competing Hangman releases sold by Zircon and APF. The Channel F Hangman game was likely released in the latter half of 1979 by Zircon, after they purchased the liquidated Channel F assets from Fairchild and started selling it themselves. The game had been intended for a late 1978 release, but the sale of Zircon appears to have scrambled those plans. Like the VCS game, It offered a computer-generated list of 160 words, or the ability to enter your own for 2 players, and had a series of little twists on the game to keep it interesting. Players can opt to remove all gaps between guessed letters to make it harder to guess the word, hide the number of letters in the word, have the computer provide a free letter, or keep a correctly guessed letter separated from the rest to leave you to guess where it fits in. The game even features a word scramble mode, where you have to guess the word based on the series of letters. You can choose to have a timer, like in the VCS version, to deal with deep thinkers. APF's version of Hangman was released on their MP1000 game console, which launched in mid-1978. Hangman's release date is unknown, though based off of the low product number, it was likely an early release. Their version of the game allows you to choose from a range of words based on the letter count. It's a passable version, though it lacks the options of either of its competitors' takes on the game. Does Hangman deserve its reputation of being one of the weaker games in the early VCS library? Well, yes, it does. Not because it's a bad game, but because it's kind of an unnecessary one if you can find even one more person bored enough to play Hangman. That said, the underlying game is fun for a little bit, which already makes it more fun to revisit than Basic Math or Blackjack. But if you're not a hardcore Atari enthusiast, it's probably fine to skip this one. Next trip to the archive, it's an incredibly weird take on America's pastime.